Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I apologize for starting just a little bit late today, just working out a few technical glitches as we do in this virtual world, but do appreciate everyone joining us today for our webinar on how to participate in the licensing hearing process for Canadian Nuclear Laboratories' proposal to construct a near-surface disposal facility. Before we get started today, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that CNL's operations in Chalk River are situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Algonquin people. At CNL, we recognize the important role that Indigenous people perform in Canada and appreciate the responsibility that they have as stewards of the environment. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, we'll note that what you're seeing on the screen right now is a list of past webinar topics. Just want to let you know that all of our webinars are posted onto our YouTube page if you'd like to watch one, and we will be posting this webinar following our meeting today. So please feel free to watch any of those videos at any time. In terms of our agenda, my name is Bill Daly, and I'm the Communications Director for Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. And today I will be speaking a little bit about the proposal to construct the near-surface disposal facility, particularly the benefits and the key reasons why CNL has put forth this proposal. We'll also begin with a short video to sort of give some background on the project. Following that, my colleague, Mike Labriola, our manager of safety and licensing, will walk you through how to participate in the hearing process. And following that presentation, we will have some short polls that we will put out to the members today, and we will also be taking questions and answers. I want to let you know that this webinar is both available in French and in English. If you'd like to access the French, there is a globe icon at the bottom of your screen that you can just click that in and you can access the French translation if you prefer. Please note that there might be a slight lag in the translation, so please wait for the translation to come through. It might take a moment or two. If you have any questions at any point today, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and type in those questions. At the end of the presentation, we will be providing answers to any questions you may have. So please type them in at any time, and then we will go through them at the end. If you have any questions beyond today's topic or would like or think of something later, you can always email us at ermstakeholder@cnl.ca, and we'd be happy to answer your questions at those times. And if there's anything that comes up today that we don't have time to answer, we will certainly respond in email following our webinar. We have the webinar today planned for an hour, so it will be concluded by 11 today. Okay, so let's get kicked off here. First of all, we'd like to start with a short video about the NSDF project. Can someone please cue up the video for us?
Okay, if you could stop sharing, I'll share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I hope that that video gave you a little bit of a refresher or information about what the proposal is and how CNL intends to do it. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a few moments to talk about the reasons why CNL has proposed to construct this facility at the Chalk River Laboratory site. As I'm speaking through these benefits and reasons today, it might be possible that some of these would resonate with you as you're considering writing your interventions to be submitted to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, who is regulating this project and will make the final decision on approving or not approving this project. As I mentioned off the top, my colleague Mike Labriola will speak more specifically about that process following my portion of the presentation. So why has CNL decided to put forth this proposal in front of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission? Well, number one, it's for the environment. As you might have seen in the video, Chalk River Laboratories, it has been the home of scientific breakthroughs for the last 70 years. During that time, these activities have created waste. Like any industry, waste is a challenge, and CNL has proposed a near-surface disposal facility as the permanent disposal facility for low-level waste at Chalk River Laboratories. Now, currently, CNL is practicing storing the low-level waste that is currently at Chalk River in temporary storage systems. Now, the issue with that is exactly that. They're temporary, meaning that over time they degrade, they fall out of line with standards, and it forces us to have to come up with new ways to temporarily manage the waste. Also, as I'll talk in a moment about, CNL is also in the process of modernizing its campus at Chalk River Laboratories, which also is creating waste in the form of building rubble and used materials. This is only adding to the amount of low-level waste that needs permanent storage. So by building a near-surface disposal facility to be able to isolate the waste, contain it in one spot, and isolate the waste for the entire duration of its hazardous lifetime, we can move away from this temporary management that is not sustainable for the long term, and also provide this benefit for future generations. The wastewater treatment plant and other facility features are also designed to be additionally protective of surrounding waterways, especially the Ottawa River. With this well-studied and scientifically proven technology, we are going to be, if approved, going to be able to finally have a final once and all solution for this waste. At the same time, CNL is on a licensed facility with security and environmental monitoring in place. In fact, currently CNL does very extensive environmental monitoring of the ground, the soil, the air, the water at and around the Chalk River Laboratory site. And if the NSDF proposal is approved, there will actually be even more monitoring to validate that the facility will be operating properly now and tomorrow. Next slide, please. It's also for groundbreaking science. As you saw in the video, Chalk River Laboratories has been the home for the last 70 years of important scientific breakthroughs that have benefited millions upon millions of people and Canadians. Today, CNL's missions include fighting cancer, finding new treatments for cancer and other diseases, includes providing new methods of providing clean energy technology that can provide energy in rural areas and also combat climate change now and in the future. And in order to pursue these important missions, as I mentioned, CNL is currently modernizing our facilities at Chalk River to basically bring the campus up to today's standards in order to fulfill those missions. So the many buildings and facilities that were at Chalk River had been used for important science in the past, but many have come to the end of their life cycle and need to be replaced so that we can keep pace with the demands of the modern world. And in order to do that, we need to bring down more than 100 structures and associated contaminated materials inside those structures, and we need a place to store them. The near surface disposal facility is the key enabling project to allow us to do that, which essentially makes way for us to modernize the campus and continue science and technology into the future. Next slide, please. It's for our communities. In terms of the project itself, it's a massive construction project. If it is approved by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, we plan to begin construction later this year of the facility. That construction will include need for skilled labor, skilled trades, hundreds of workers, supplies and services, business opportunities. Beyond the actual construction phase, we also need to operate the facility as it's accepting waste for the next 50 years before it's closed. That means that there will be additional good jobs and skilled labor and business opportunities throughout. And remember that I just talked about the bigger picture of Chalk River Laboratories and how the NSDF is the key enabling facility for the Chalk River Laboratories modernization of the site, which means that through the NSDF, many other opportunities for future business and science and jobs will continue to be created by CNL. So the NSDF has far-reaching implications and benefits for the communities both today and tomorrow. Next slide, please. And it's for the future. So as I've mentioned off the hop here, the NSDF is designed as the permanent solution for low-level waste. That means that not only will it benefit the people today in terms of enhancing protection of the environment immediately, it will also do so for the long term. It will also mean that we can move away from having to continuously manage that, meaning the people that come after us will not have that same burden. But at the same time, this is not abandonment. As I mentioned, the Chalk Rivers Laboratories site is an enduring site with strict security and environmental monitoring in place. And the facility has been designed in such a way that for hundreds and hundreds of years, it will be fully able to contain the waste, meaning that until the waste reaches a point where the radioactivity inside of it decays to essentially background levels and is no longer a hazard, the facility will fully contain it. And so that means that in the long future, the waste will not be a hazard by the time that the facility reaches the end of its useful life. But still, we will be here as Canadian Nuclear Laboratories for the enduring future to be able to monitor the facility. So in closing or in summary, the NSDF facility is important in terms of moving the state of waste management forward in Canada. We've done the homework, and it's very clear that the NSDF facility is the right solution appropriate for the low-level waste. This type of facility has been used in other countries around the world, and CNL has also been managing similar facilities in other parts of the country, and we know that they work. And this facility will not be abandoned in the future, and it will create benefits for those of us today as well as those of us tomorrow. So with that, I'll now pass it over to Mike Labriola to talk about how the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission licensing process works and how you can participate. So over to you, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Bill. My name is Mike Labriola. I've been with the project for about 6 years, and today filling in for Sandra Font, the Manager of Regulatory Approvals. So the CNSC two-part hearing. The purpose is to consider CNL's application to amend our operating license to include the NSDF. Part one of the hearing was an opportunity for CNL and the CNSC staff to give presentations to the commission. The commission then asked questions to both CNL and CNSC staff based on the content of both the presentations and the written submissions. This was a completely virtual event held on February 22nd, earlier this year. The webcast and transcript of the event are available at the CNSC website if you're interested. Part two of the hearing begins May 31st. Part two is an opportunity for the public and Indigenous communities to present directly to the commission. The event will be held in person in Pembroke. The length of part two is dependent on how many in-person interventions are made. It's very likely that part two will last several weeks. It will be broken down into the following themes or topics. So we have environmental assessment and protection, the Indigenous consultation and engagement, long-term safety case, and the license amendment. So hearing interventions. Anyone with an interest or expertise in NSDF can be an intervener. CNL staff can also be an intervener, but we do ask that you identify yourself as an employee as part of your submission. The steps to become an intervener are: submit your request by April 11th. You will then receive acknowledgement of your request. The commission will accept or deny your request, and your intervention will get a commission member document reference number and will become publicly available. I did say the commission will accept or deny. I believe that's just a provision there to make sure you're on topic. You are intervening about NSDF. I'm not aware of interventions ever being denied as long as they're on topic. So there are two types of interventions: a written submission only, or a written submission that also includes an oral presentation at the hearing. For written submissions only, the commission members will have read all of them prior to the hearings. Your written submission will not necessarily be read out loud during the hearing, but it could be referenced by commission members and it could generate questions and discussions. If you intend to make an oral submission as well, you are limited to 10 minutes of speaking time. You present directly to the commission members. As a result of your presentation, the commission may ask questions to either CNL or the CNSC staff. Do note that all submissions will become available to the public. Your personal information, such as address and phone number, are included in your submission and are essential to linking the submission to you, the author. If you do not want phone number and address to be available to the public, you are allowed to submit that information on a separate page. So, next slide, please. The request form. So here on this slide is just some information that will be present on the request form, just for your reference. More details about how to intervene and what needs to be included on your submission can be found at the CNSC website link provided on this slide. And we move on to next steps. So if you need assistance putting your submission together or have any additional questions, they can always be sent to ermstakeholder@cnl.ca, or you can visit the website at www.engagewithcnl.ca/NSDF. And I believe it's back to you, Bill.
Thanks, Mike, for that. Okay, so that concludes our presentation, and in a moment we do see there's some questions coming in, and we're going to be addressing those questions in just a moment. But before we do that, we are just going to run a couple quick live polls. So I believe Rachel will put them up in front of the screen. Yes, I see them now. So first question for everyone to choose their option, either yes or no question. Do you intend on submitting an intervention at the Part 2 hearing? So we'll give you just a minute to answer those questions. Okay, and so we have the response here. So it looks like a number of people, 90% are saying no, that they're not interested in actually submitting an intervention. So that's completely fine. And then we have 10% saying that they will. So good to know. If anyone does have a question about submitting or is on the fence about submitting their interventions, we're happy to answer those questions today. And then I believe we have one more question. Second one, which will give you a minute to answer. Did you find the information shared in this webinar helpful so far? So we'll just give you a couple minutes, secs to answer that question. Okay, so we see here that most people said that they did find the information so far helpful. So thank you for that. And then anyone who doesn't, again, happy to answer your questions on that. So thank you very much for participating in this poll. It's really helpful for us to know sort of what we need to do as we continue to communicate about this project. So I believe now we are at the point, and I do see there are some questions, so I will read them out and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can here today. And if we can't answer any particular questions, we will get back to, we will follow up after the meeting. So first question, probably a lot of these are going to go to Mike. So apparently storage facilities will degrade over time, resulting in an increase in the risk to the environment. If CNL allowed this to happen, wouldn't that be a violation of the license for the site? Isn't CNL obligated to maintain their storage facilities as long as they can contain radiological hazards or hazardous substances? Mike?
Certainly. So we do have waste in storage facilities at CNL right now and CRL, and they absolutely are being maintained to the requirements. So whether it's in a warehouse storing boxes and metal containers of waste, or whether it's in-ground storage right now, they are maintained, they are monitored, and they are absolutely being held to our site license conditions and requirements. The difference here between storage and disposal is that if you have a warehouse, there's no requirement to demonstrate that this warehouse is going to last several hundred years, because it is just storage. For our near surface disposal facility, we have to demonstrate that it is designed to last many hundreds of years. So yeah, to wrap that up, absolutely our waste is safely contained at CRL right now, but we do need a permanent disposal solution.
Thank you, Mike. Looking at the next question here, which I will take a stab at, and Mike, you can add anything you'd like. So if the site will never be abandoned, does that mean CNL is committing the government to maintaining site access restrictions in perpetuity? Will a resident or farmer have access to that site? So the answer here, so Atomic Energy Canada Limited is the government crown corporation that actually provides funding to Canadian nuclear laboratories. We operate their site at Chalk River, but it is owned by the government. So yes, the Chalk River Laboratories is meant to be an enduring entity with no plans for closure at this point. So at this time, it is assumed that Atomic Energy of Canada will continue to have control over the Chalk River Laboratory sites in perpetuity. Now, even though it is the case that the NSDF will be inside of that licensed facility, as I had mentioned, with the security and environmental monitoring in place, we have done studies to show that if there were to be someone like a farmer or a family living at the site in many hundreds of years from now, that it would be safe. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to comment there on, Mike, just to wrap that up.
No, yeah, sure. I'll add that absolutely. Our long-term safety assessment does have to assume that at some point these institutional controls may fail, and as a result of that, people can live on or near the facility. So we have to assess what are the implications of those scenarios, and the assessments demonstrate that we meet all the acceptance criteria.
Thanks, Mike. Next question, is it too late to meet with someone from CNL to ask questions? Absolutely not. It's never too late to do so. And there are multiple ways that you can meet with us. We'd be happy to have a technical expert meet with you if you have technical questions about the facility or any other questions about CNL. You can email us at ermstakeholder.com, and we would definitely follow up and set up a meeting. So we're happy to do that. Next question, when will I know when I get to intervene? And I don't know, Mike, if you want to add anything here, but essentially the process is now open. So the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is currently accepting interventions. And as Mike kind of pointed out through his presentation, the interventions are can be submitted in writing through a portal, which we will share the specific information, the specific link to the portal. You can also email the CNSC to share your intervention that way. And then in terms of as Mike pointed out in the presentation, there are certain things that you could put in your intervention that would fall under very general themes. If the only way that the intervention would not be accepted is if the CNSC believed it was be out of scope of the project. Mike, anything to add there?
No, I mean, when will we know when they get to intervene? Yeah, that's up to the CNSC to get back to you individually.
Oh, yeah.
I don't quite know when they'll get back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I guess that I missed that part of the question. So yes, once you submit, the CNSC has to look through all of the interventions, kind of categorize them, and then yes, they'll follow up with you, and that's part of the reason why they need your contact information. Where can I find out what a hearing process is like? So there have been actually a number of hearings for the nuclear industry and others, and there actually have been recorded. And I know we have access to recordings, the public recordings, and you can go onto the CNSC's website and you can take a look at previous hearings to see how they are. In terms of this hearing, as Mike mentioned, we actually had a two-part hearing. So the first hearing was it was actually held in February, and that was for CNSC staff and CNL staff to address questions directly from commissioners. And then the second part of the hearing, which is going to be held at the Best Western in Pembroke, and it can be viewed virtually or people can attend in person. That hearing is to hear the interventions of the public and Indigenous communities, and it will go from at least 1 week, and depending on the amount of interventions received, it could go longer. But in terms of seeing what a hearing would look like, I'm sure we can provide some links, but you can also go to the CNSC's website if you'd like to find recordings of hearings. Can I decide not to intervene after my intervention has been submitted? Like, could I change from oral presentation just to written? Yes, the CNSC won't mandate you to do one thing or the other, and if you change your mind, you can do that. One thing I will note that if the issue is around, having to travel in order to intervene in person or do an oral intervention, there will be an option to do it virtually. So that might be more convenient for people. So just keeping that in mind, but yes, you can decide to change. However, I believe if you wanted to change from written to oral, you would have to communicate that to the CNSC as soon as possible. The other way around wouldn't be too difficult. What is an example of theme for my intervention. So yes, so the CNSE, mostly just for their own ability to sort of categorize interventions, have listed 4 themes. Again, we can follow up with the specifics, but I believe, and Mike, if you know them, but I believe there's one is around the licensing process itself. So you may have comments on how the process runs. One is on our environmental assessment. So the environmental assessment for the project for the NSDF been going on for multiple years. It looks at all aspects of the environment. It has heavy public consultation and Indigenous consultation or Indigenous engagement. Also recorded there in terms of who did we speak to, what were their concerns, what were their questions, how are those addressed. The other is the long-term safety case. Maybe Mike, you could take a second to describe what that might look like.
Sure, that theme includes things like the NSDF facility design, the pre-closure safety analysis. So that's the safety analysis for what happens during the operations of the facility, the post-closure safety assessment. So everything after a couple hundred years, and includes waste characterization, waste inventory, and the waste acceptance criteria. I will note too that you don't have to be too concerned about the theme at all. That's more of a CNSC function to categorize. So if you just want to talk about the project and how you support it or don't support it, you feel free to write whatever you like. The CNSC will slot you in the theme that is most appropriate, unless you identify which theme you prefer to be a part of.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, don't get too concerned about the themes. It is more about the CNSE just being able to organize this. Did I hear correctly? The institutional controls will fail. Please explain what would constitute institutional control failure.
I can,
Mike.
Yes. So Bill said earlier that AECL will continue to enforce land use restrictions and institutional controls for as long as required. Now, when we do a long-term safety assessment, we still have to assume some conservative or worst case scenarios. So our assessment would be very simple and very short if institutional controls never failed. If they never failed, you don't have people living near the facility, you don't have degradation of the facility, you don't have anything really, there's no chance of anything kind of getting out or no exposures. So when we do our safety assessment, we must assume that things don't go to plan. Therefore, we assume that institutional controls eventually fail. And because of that, your maintenance of the facility no longer is up to standard. And then eventually you have degradation that could lead to contaminant release. And even in these scenarios, the people living on or near the facility still receive doses that are minuscule compared to the natural background dose rate in Canada.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, though no questions currently. Any other questions or comments? Let's give people a moment to formulate their thoughts. Okay. Oh, here we go. One question coming in. What issues are the public bringing up? Have we helped them understand that what the waste we are putting in the NSDF is being put in a much safer state than it is now? So I could comment a bit on this, and then Mike, if you wanted to add anything. So first of all, the public engagement has been going on for many years, and there have been a number of different kind of topics or questions that have been raised. And when we look at the big ones that are in sort of themes that we've realized over time, some were about the type of waste that comes into the facility. So, you know, it's, as we've said, it's low level waste coming into the facility, so not intermediate waste or other types of nuclear waste. There's a lot of questions around, you know, how will we be sure that the Ottawa River is protected? You know, basically the idea that would the facility eventually leak, or would contaminated material find its way flow into the river. And so we've been addressing that issue or that question over time, in terms of the actual facility design, the fact that we have dedicated wastewater treatment processes, the fact that the facility is built on a bedrock ridge that actually directs water flow away from the river. Those are some of the types of things that we've had asked over and over, and have put out communications products, presentations, videos, different kind of methods to try to answer those questions. And then Mike, I don't know if you have a few more examples that we could share today. I think you're on mute, Mike.
I was mostly looking at our next question, getting prepared for that. No, as far as what the public's bringing up, yeah, we've heard that the general themes are proximity to the Ottawa River. Make sure how do you know what you know? How do you know what kind of waste you're putting in there? Of course, we have an extensive waste characterization program, but and also transportation of waste from other facilities. That is an issue the public brings up a lot.
Okay, since you're preparing for the next question, Mike, I might as well send one over to you too.
Okay, so the question is a follow-up on the institutional control period. Please provide the CNSC's definition of institutional control and how this addresses failure. Well, I don't have CNSC glossary in front of me, but I will say that the institutional control period or institutional controls refer to stewardship of the land and the facility. So, for example, an institutional control could be the fact that you're doing visual inspections of the facility on a periodic basis. It could include you're doing groundwater monitoring, you're doing radiation monitoring or environmental monitoring around the facility. It could include the fact that you have a fence and you're periodically inspecting it. The land use restrictions on the title deed of the property is also an institutional control function, because that prevents someone from buying the land or perhaps building on the land. So those are some examples of how institutional controls kind of work. How they address failures: the intent is that your inspections and monitoring would be able to determine if things aren't working as designed. If you have elevated levels of a contaminant, that implies that you have some sort of issue that needs to be remediated. And of course, by maintaining your fence and maintaining your security and maintaining your land use restrictions, you're preventing people from living on top and getting exposed in that sort of manner.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions? I did just, it looks like a comment. Institutional control means that the access to the site has to be restive as long as there is an unacceptable risk to both human and the environment. Sounds like a question, comment there.
Yes, I mean, institutional controls will continue for as long as the site is a licensed facility. So again, that kind of goes along with the no abandonment.
Restricted, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I believe that then wraps up sort of our webinar today. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is a project that we do firmly believe in is very important for CNL and for this sort of moving forward the state of waste management in Canada. We appreciate your time today. I know there are a few things for us to follow up on, and so we'll certainly do that. And again, we are available anytime for meetings, one-on-one discussions, to answer your question and emails. Anything you'd like, you can email us at ermstakeholder@cnl.ca, or you could check our Facebook or our website, cnl.ca. CA. So lots of ways to get in touch with us or to keep up to date with what's going on. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Mike, for helping us out with these questions. And with that, I will say have a great day and thanks again. Goodbye, everybody.